Well, we've spoken before, I think a few times on our channel. I think personally, I did one interview with you, and my colleague, well, did I think one or two other two. Um, well, this album, it's been 5 years since your previous one.
Thanks for
Um,
me.
Sorry?
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, is it? Ah, but obviously you have written many songs, and you were really lucky. I mean, happy the last 5 years. So, um, what took you so long, Asaf?
Well, there's that Leonard Cohen quote, if I knew where songs come from, I would visit more often.
Okay.
It's not that I wasn't trying to write. I was really trying. I was not, drinking a pina colada on a beach somewhere. But everything I wrote seemed to be overly familiar. Like water very quickly takes the easiest route, You have a
Hmm.
little stream and then the water always flows there until it becomes such a wide chasm that water cannot even think of going anywhere else. And and that's kind of what happens for an artist once you do this long enough. I don't know. I felt very different on the inside, but the songs felt like I could have written them 10 years ago. And
Can you explain a bit more what the songs were? What was it? The sound? Was it the subject, the topic that you wrote about? The melodies, maybe? I don't know.
I think it's everything together. A song always, the reason I write songs and not poetry or I don't make instrumental music is because the whole thing coagulates together for me. Like it's always one theme that feeds off each other. So yeah, texturally, it wasn't feeling precise or honest, and sonically, it didn't feel courageous or new or depicting the specificity of what I was feeling. And I really didn't have it. I really thought that's it. Maybe the well is dry, and I should, take my jersey and hang it in the whatever. And I did all kinds of exercises because I knew I was very interested in the communication between me, the conscious me, and the subconscious self or selves or universality or whatever it is, the infinite, the divine, the whatever people choose to name it. Because I witnessed something when I was writing my previous album, Anagnosis, which was this immense abyss within the self, which ironically, going deep down inside myself, I found something truly human, truly universal. And I witnessed it for a second, but I didn't expect that it would really affect me so much. I really felt the 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 disillusion of the shell of the me, of the self, was tangible. It was physical. Like I felt out of focus. I felt like people who do too much ayahuasca or LSD and never really come back, like that the membrane that separates the self from the other, the conscious from the subconscious is a bit too porous. Things come in and out too much.
Can you pinpoint when this happened? What triggered it? What
I
sort of?
really feel it was the dive into an agnosis. I feel that when I
Okay.
write albums, when I write songs, it's not, I used to. Every album is like an archaeological layer.
Hmm.
And it used to be, okay, she hurt me. There was that girl, she said that, I said this. But then, it interests me why, even The Reckoning, my first EP was called Now That You Are Leaving. Now That You're Leaving. It was a very blameful album. And then The Reckoning, my first LP, was about this idea that I need to take some responsibility over these feelings that keep on happening in relationships and so on and so forth, until there was this thing that I really felt like it is still very personal, but just like Jung or Joseph Campbell, like what's interesting is that there is a universal song, fear with a capital F or hope with a capital H are not mine. They are all of us, and if you can really hone into that core of emotion or idea, then you really have a chance to communicate on a deeper resonance. And so yeah, so when I was writing Anagnosis, I really felt I dug too deep and I just fell into whatever it is that happens in the subconscious. And I really feel that I've never truly recovered. I mean, you can see my conscious self is intact, but there is always like a almost like a sound of running water in the back of my head somewhere. And I knew that I want to investigate it further, but I was very afraid. Um, and so I started to do all these kinds of meditation and all this kind of self-guided imagination techniques that Carl Jung used. I was reading the Red Book, Carl Jung's book that came out years after he died because he was kind of ashamed of it because it's an intellectual Western father of, psychology trying to grasp his need of spirituality.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it was a very interesting thing, but no songs came out. And then this weird thing happened. I went to Mexico. I started writing my dreams, nothing. I did all these meditations, nothing. And then I had a concert in Paris, a solo concert. And 2 days before the concert, my manager tells me, "Hey, look at this cool mail." And it was, "Hello, Mr. Brad Pitt would like to attend your concert in whatever it was in Paris." And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And then Brad Pitt came to the show, and then he came to the backstage. And then we had this conversation, and I live in the southwest of France. He has a big estate in the south of France. Famously, it's Miraval. They make famous rosé wine, but it also holds the studio called Miraval Studios, which is a legendary studios that Pink Floyd recorded The Wall there, like maybe my top one album of all times. And I was like, "Hey, you have that studio. It's not far away from me." And he said, "Yeah, you should come record." And I said, "Well, I do not have songs." And he said, "You should come write in the place. It's not just a studio. It's a beautiful place. You should come visit." I said, "Sure, Brad Pitt, and you're inviting me to and I thought that would be the end of it. And the next day we received a mail that says, Mr. Brad Pitt would like to invite you to. Anyway, and I went for like some kind of residency. They put me in a villa. I was alone for 7 days. I took my guitar and a keyboard, and it was supposed to be great weather, but it rained like a Kurosawa film, just like rain all the time in the background. And they took care of everything. They fed me, and the house was nice and everything. And I never met him again, by the way. I was in there for like a week, then I recorded there. But anyway, I don't know why. Again, if I knew where songs come from, I would visit more often. But somehow, after years of trying to find the songs and not finding them, I wrote the first four songs of the album in that week in the villa in Miraval Studios, in Miraval Estate. And I came back home and I was very unsure of it because it had something that sounded like rap, but I don't rap. But I had a lot of words because there was a panic about this unraveling of the self, and so there was a lot of lyrics. Anyway, so I had these elements, but it wasn't complete. And I came back to my girlfriend and I said, "I think I have something." And she said, "Yeah, you should definitely continue." She heard them. And then me and my girlfriend have this thing that we watch a movie every week, like a classic movie, because I used to study cinema and I was an animator and I love film, and she's younger and she doesn't know a lot of the movies. So it was the Hitchcock period. And it was Vertigo. That was just what came up. And we watched Vertigo about 2 days after I came back. And the beginning scene with Bernard Herrmann, the composer of it, starts like this weird. It feels like a spiral going downwards. Da dee da bo dee da dee da. Anyways, and I paused it. I ran upstairs to the studio, and I knew that that's the sound of the album. So that was like, I know it's a very long answer to a very short question, but that was the entire arc of all the different elements that had to be in place in order for me to understand what the album is. And then once I knew it, once I had the beginning of what I wrote in Miraval, understanding that Bernard Herrmann and composers like cinema composers from the 40s and 50s are going to be influential, then the it wrote itself in like a week or two, like
Yeah, yeah.
everything.
Really interesting. I have some questions that I thought maybe I should ask them when you were talking, but I think no, I will save them because the story is that really interesting. The thing that you said about writing your previous album, then well, becoming detached, maybe, and you were a bit afraid of it. What can you take us to that moment, that place? What happened? What?
There is I just read a big article about the dark. It was very dramatic, overly dramatic, but about the dark side of meditation. I'm not a big meditator, but I was, in the COVID days, we were all alone and trying new things, and I wanted to ground myself, and so I started meditating, but I also started reading a lot of Jung and a lot of Joseph Campbell in those days. And it led me to an investigation of the self. And there was a moment, what this article talked about, that the dark side of meditation is a disassociation of the self, that people start to disassociate themselves from themselves. And I think I felt something. I wouldn't call it the dark side at all. I would call it, the point of meditation. But but I feel that if we have to imagine it's a metaphorical shell, a wall that protects us, protects the conscious self from the subconscious, but it doesn't really, because the subconscious controls most of what the conscious does, even though the conscious is not aware of it. But if there's a wall there, I feel that when I was using my tools to dig in and to look inside, I really felt a rapture. I really felt, oh shit, I tore something I shouldn't have torn. It almost feels like, I don't know if you know this feeling when you do exercise, like physical exercise, and you feel you strained a muscle wrong. Oh shit, like that was a movement I shouldn't have done. That's really how it felt, but in the mind, like, and I really feel that there was a moment of rapture, which is, I guess, what people would call the nirvana, or people, that's like the aim of letting go.
Is
But
it?
that moment, I couldn't really let go of it. And the whole album Unfurl is about that conflict between the awe and wonder of letting go into an infinite, endless something, and the panic of the conscious self, or whatever I call me, wanting to hold on and wanting to rebuild a structure in this entropic chaos.
Have you let go already then?
I think what I learned in my study of myself is that you can, and I think this is probably true even for the greatest gurus, letting go is not a constant. You cannot reach nirvana and just reach there and just let go and say, okay, I did it. It's a constant unraveling and raveling, unraveling and raveling. You reach it for a moment, for a glimpse, and then it's gone. You had it in your hands and it went away. But those moments are worth the effort.
Yeah.
They give you something for the rest of your life.
You said you were well rapture. It felt like a rapture. You also were a bit afraid, maybe. The first time that you actually found it again. What was it? Was it during this album or was it?
I think I found it, I think it found me, and that's kind of my point. My point is that ever since then, I notice myself being slightly out of focus. I notice myself being able to, like literally stare at, I live in a very natural uh, place. Um, and so I can stare at the river for like, I don't know, I think it's a minute, but 2 hours have passed, which is not crazy, like people do that. We lose ourselves. But but this is the point that to me it's very interesting. If I lost myself, where did the self go to in this moment?
Mhm.
Where did I, whatever I perceive as me, disappear to in those 2 hours? And so I started looking more and more for those moments. I looked in my dreams. What do my dreams have? Because, Freud or Jung or I don't know, 1,000 people since would tell you that that's a little window into the subconscious processes. So I started writing my dreams, and suddenly, because I was looking at my dreams, I started remembering more of my dreams. It's a process that the more you're in tune with it, you start remembering more of it, and you start waking up in the middle of the night and journaling it, so you remember more of it. And I don't know, it was just an interesting investigation. And so, yeah, so I would say that I actively looked for it while trying to write the album in this last years, but it also found me in times where I didn't expect it. And like it's kind of what I keep on telling you. It even now, it's not completely gone away. If
Yeah.
I if I just change my focus and try to listen to whatever it is, metaphorically, the back of my head, I think I can find it.
What has it given you?
Panic, pain, but also beauty and the glimpse into something. I'm not a spiritual person. And I think this is, when I read Jung, I think this is the conflict that he had, and this is why he didn't release the Red Book in his lifetime. Like I'm almost ashamed to feel this awe, this reverence to something that I cannot fully describe. And as an artist, it's the that's I think that's the tragedy of the real artist because it's undescribable. But as an artist, my job is to describe it, right? Like that's my literal only job is to take emotions or thoughts and put them in some kind of form, in an order, in a structure,
Yeah.
and present it to somebody else. And there's this thing that I went through with an agnosis and certainly now with Unfurl, is that I feel it also made me understand the job of the artist differently. Because if I could find this inside myself, I don't believe that I'm special, you know? I believe that every single conscious being has this inside themselves. And And so my job changed. I cannot, if I see an ocean and I try to cup it with my hands and take some water and run up that cave and go back to the world of the sun and show this water to you, by the time I get to you, like I have a drop of water on my finger and I tell you, this is the ocean, that's what I saw. That's not really going to describe to you what the ocean is. But what I figured out is that I don't need to describe the ocean to you. You have the ocean within you. All I need to do is give you a little memory. And one drop of water is enough to wake up the ocean within you. And that's what it evolved in me as my job as the artist. My job as the artist is to create a memory, a dream, a revelation, even if it's subconscious within you, to see your own soul.
Yeah.
Like you never should see me in there.
Interesting. You said you wrote 4 songs while being in the villa of a Brad Pitt estate.
Yes.
Um, what was the first song? I hope it is Unfurling Dream, but I don't know.
Unfurling Dream and Unfurl were actually the last two songs of the
Okay.
album. The first songs are the songs that still sound that they have some elements of
The old.
Asaf. So
Yeah.
so Hunted was one of them, 16 Hooves, like the guitar songs that later evolved into being a bit more. You can see like in Hunted, there is a bit of a flow, but it's not rap yet. 16 Hooves doesn't have any rap in it. Serenity, which is kind of, I started experimenting with a formless form, like A, B, C, D, E, instead of A, B, A, B. And I don't remember which was the fourth song. I don't remember which was the fourth song I wrote there, but But yeah, and then once I started building those songs with the Bernard Herrmann kind of orchestrations, the cinematic orchestrations, I understood what the album is, and I understood what I'm talking about. And this is the most interesting part of being an artist, a writer, is that if you go through a stream of consciousness like that, you don't know what's going to come up. There is also the moment of revelation to me. To me, there is like, oh shit, that's interesting. I didn't know that's what I'm going through or thinking about. And but once that is established, then there is grace and bliss of just saying, okay, I know the theme, I know the sound, I know the world, I've walked in this landscape. Now I just need to walk a bit more. And then that's the most enjoyable part. After, 4 years of hell, you get 2 weeks of like, oh, this is nice.
You said, well, the first songs that you wrote were a bit mixed with the old Asaf.
Mhm.
And you just described, well, once you knew what the album and the sound and the words were going to be, um, during what song maybe did this enlightenment come to you? Was it?
I think so. I'm presenting it a bit too linearly. It's a bit more
Okay.
confused than that, but I think I really understood once I started writing Unfurling Dream and Unfurl. Um, when those were like the accumulation of everything, then I also came back to Haunted and to 16 Hooves, and I retweaked them to get the like to get to be more concise with the others. But what was the moment of revelation? I guess the moment of revelation was after I had like the first songs like Haunted or 16 Hooves, and I came upstairs and I started playing with orchestrating them on my keyboard, doing strings and doing horns and doing all these kind of things. And suddenly I tried to rap or something, and I was like, okay, I'm going to delete this later. That's not going to stay. And I think the moment of revelation came when I brought my brother and my girlfriend, which my girlfriend obviously lives with me, but my brother lives close by. And I trust their judgment. They're people who are very honest with me, sometimes brutally so. And and I heard it back and I saw their reactions, and I realized that there is something. There is a newness and a preciseness. This is I once I had a bit of feedback, I could see on myself that this is really a true depiction of what I'm feeling. I'm not lying, I'm not cheating, I'm not taking the easy route. So I think that was it. But then there is a lot of then the conscious self starts working a lot, because then you really need to work with your skills, your traditions, your wants, your aims, and then like the subconscious you can leave it for a bit and do your work.
Yeah. What is the song Unfurling Dream? What dream was it?
If you ask Joseph Campbell, it's there's only one dream, and we all there's only one song that we all know by heart. The dream the dream is the uncanny valley that Freud talks about, this thing that is similar but not similar, the you that is you but not you, like this David Lynch kind of world where things are real but not real, normal but not normal. There's always like the camera is a bit tilted. That's the dream, the feeling that reality is not reality, the feeling that the self is not what you thought it is, the feeling that there is an invisible world that you are not a part of, or that everything is a part of. It's the dream is the bridge between the here and there, whatever the there is. I don't know.
What is well, you said that you started writing down dreams more often, and that once you did this more often, then, well, you were more in contact with those dreams. What did you learn about your own dreams?
I learned that my psychologist really loves interpreting dreams. That's most of what I learned. I learned that interpreting the dreams says way more about you than the dreams themselves. That's what I think. I think that the dream is a Rorschach test. Um, I honestly don't think it matters. What I really think, if I need to let my whole brain think about this, is that dreams are not secret messages of your brain. I think they're random images. And I think your conscious self then needs to structure them into a narrative because that's what the conscious self does. The brain is a narrative machine, it's a structure machine. It needs to have confined, labeled things. And so it's more interesting to me what I think about the dream than the dream itself. And what I found is that I'm pretty normal, that my dreams are not so special, and my interpretation of the dreams is not so special. And when you do read a lot of people who have devoted themselves into studying the threads that hold us together, the archetypes of dreams, the archetypes of psyches, the archetypes of narratives and mythologies, like we're all the same animal, as much as we want to feel differentiated. And that was another thing, like this, unfurl, it started off with me looking at, I was losing myself for 2 hours staring at things. And there is this plant, fern. It's a very ancient lineage of plants. And they start off as this coiled spiral. And they slowly, and if you go every day, you can see it almost like a stop motion film. You can see them, open a bit more and open a bit more. And they reach out like a courageous hand, arm. It's not really an arm, but to the world, suddenly something that was so, like um, infant-like, in a womb, just kind of spreads itself outwards in a moment of opening and accepting whatever the outside, the other is going to inflict upon it. But it's also an act of hope. And I thought that's it. Like unfurling myself, not to the other, as in to you, to my girlfriend, to my relationships, that's less interesting, but to the other, the otherness. Um, we're all just membranes that separate the me from the other. And how much are you willing to exercise the opening of that to let things out and to take things in? That's the interesting part for me.
And what is your role in this then? Because, well, you have a gift, of course. You can write about it. Well, at first you thought about it. Maybe you searched for it or not, or maybe it came to you. And then you write 8 songs. And what is your role in this? Or is it just, I don't think everybody can do this.
First of all, thank you. I'm not sure I deserve it. I don't know what my skills are, but I know that they are. If I have any superpower, it has nothing to do with my singing or my writing. It has to do with moving forward. There is a fantasy writer that I really like. I also am, I read Jung and I don't know, I read about quantum physics, but I also read I watch Game of Thrones just like the other any other guy. But there's a fantasy writer that I really love. She's called Robin Hobb, and that's her pen name. And her heroes are never, it's not the people with the most, magic and sword ability or whatever. It's people who just, they take a punch and they keep on going. And there's something unromantic and gray about it. But if I do have a superpower, it's to be able to absorb pain within the myriad of kinds of pain physical and mental and emotional, and decide that I'm just going to keep on taking the spoon into my own intestines, you know? Um, and I think that's the job. If you ask me what the job of the artist is, or my job, there's like almost like a shaman uh profession here, like necessity of of a civilized community is that not everybody has that power to walk so close or inside the abyss and come back and continue and go back and continue to go through that well. And so if I do have a power, that's the power. The power is I need to die like the shaman dies. The shaman ritualistically needs to die in order to go to the world of the spirits and then hear what they have to say and then somehow revive himself or themselves to get back to the world of the living. And then the tragedy is how do you translate the language of the dead, the language of the spirit, the language of the divine to the language of the mortals? You can't. It's an impossible task, but you must try. And so I think that's the job. The job is to go so deep into the personal that it becomes humanly universal and help others recognize their own souls. That's really, I know it's romanticized and I know it's a very big statement, but I really do think that especially today, that's the job of the artist to remind, to rehumanize humans in a world that keeps on dehumanizing them.
A nice last quote. My last question, and it's more of a, well, earthly question. Has Brad Pitt heard the album?
He did, but there is a lot of things. First of all, he has like a thank you in the credits of the album, because without him, I know it's serendipitous. It might have been that I would have written the songs without it a week later or a week, but that's the story. Now, the story of this album has to do with me coming back from Mexico after dream journaling, meeting Brad Pitt and going to his villa and writing the songs. And it has to do with Bernard Herrmann. I do not, I never talked to him personally again since. I talked to his assistants and I talked to the people who run the estate and the studios. They all say he loves it. But I don't know. I don't know. And I honestly, I mean, I care for my own ego. But his part in the story, he did way more than he could have by liking the album. That's one person liking the album. He, I have to say another thing, and this is really something beautiful. I didn't have the money to record my album in Miraval. They went, I'm an independent artist. This is a place for, the Kendrick Lamar and A$AP Rocky to record their albums. It's an insanely well furbished, amazing studio. But they really went out of their way. So Mr. Pitt, but his entire staff and everybody who runs the studios and everything, they went out of their way to make sure that we can record the album there in the artistic vision that we had. And so, he did so much more than he could by liking or not liking the album. So I don't really want to know. Like I would be afraid that that after all this, he hates the album, but it doesn't really matter at this point.
No, but it's nice to have some sort of roundup. I know I
Yeah,
like when
it would be a
stories.
nice circle.
Yeah, yeah, and then
Asaf, I'm taking this you need to come with me to the Oscars, but
no, but I mean that no, but I just mean that he actually has heard the album and he actually likes it. I think that's a nice ending too.
I
That's
hope he does. I hope
yeah.
he does, and I will let you know if he ever comes
Okay,
and tells
that's
me.
good. No, yeah, because he gave you the rehearsal time and then he actually let you record the album. So I think that means something, of course.
Yeah, yeah, it's very flattering, and yeah, the album would not be this album with any different narrative.
Yeah. Thank you, Asaf.
Thank you very much.
and I really enjoyed the album. So I will keep listening to it.
Thank you, Martin. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.